Right, welcome. Thanks everyone. I'm Jason Rymer with GagaMuller. This morning I'm sporting a black eye for my troubles, but I compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So for me, Jiu-Jitsu is like real-time data. You get real-time feedback in the moment. So that's my point. And black eyes. An introduction. So great presentation there. Ross was really interesting. I found that. And we'll probably see lots of themes weave through these discussions. Standardisation and communication, collaboration. They're all foundations, and really setting that foundation and getting things right, getting the processes right, standardising things and communicating at the start. You don't even need, there's no point talking about automation and AI. It's like you've got to get those foundations. And that was the same 20 years ago. But we're more of a paper-driven industry, but it was still about communication. It was still about getting those standards right and processes. So you still need to get that right, and they're the fundamentals. Then you can start looking at that automation piece and start looking at how do we use predictive analytics, and then start leveraging that. So I think we're in a really interesting time in the industry. It's moving at rapid pace, and I think everyone's challenging, trying to keep up with the trends and things like that. But you need to keep that in perspective. It's like, okay, where's the value? Is it actually creating value to what we're doing? And how can you leverage it to improve? It's an augmented where you've got people, the process, and the technology, and they're all combined. And it's trying to see how that balance and trying to get that balance right. Which I think people are worried that AI is going to be removing jobs. It's not. You still, as a fundamental, that you're still going to have cost managers, QSs, planners on projects, making sure, doing the due diligence, because that will always be done. But they'll have better tools to be able to automate some of the more administrative tasks, so then we can focus on where's the value add. I think that was what key part of your conclusion is. Now we're doing less about remeasuring this foundation 15 times. Now we can focus on proper targeted communication and discussions about value engineering or things that can improve the overall project. So my background, civil engineer, been in the construction industry since 2000 is when I first arrived in Ireland. So I've got a lot of site experience delivering large-scale projects. Now, last 10 years has all been around sort of digital transformation, BIM, information, and the last 5 years is just all about data, really, because essentially I found that was the underlying sort of thread of all of it is data and how we share it, communicate it, and use it. GagaMuller data is the foundation of everything we do, and it's really part of where I think our USP is that we drive project management from a data-based approach, looking at digital governance and data management is the approach, and we're looking at digital transformation, project management, cost management, portfolio management across the full life cycle. If we look at the challenges, people are probably really aware that construction industry is lagging behind other industries. I think there's different challenges that construction has compared to, say, manufacturing. You're out in the field, projects are vastly different, and it's trying to engage the teams working in the field. I think the technology, mobile phones and things like that has started to open up that gap where we're now being able to access that information, access those people, boots on the ground is getting easier. We're looking at the large projects. There's always the high percentage of them over budget, over schedule, but it is are they engaging those teams early enough in the process to get realistic budgets, realistic and accurate schedules of time? Because usually you see that it's project execution time, and they go, okay, where's our budget? And you've got a design that's already done, and they're wondering why their cost plan needs to be thrown out the window because they've got a design that went off kilter and didn't align to what a project goal of what the cost is. You've got suddenly they get a client on board of a data center who's going to they throw an unrealistic date of like, we want to be in this building on X date, and so everything scrambles to rearrange that, which impacts costs, which impacts design. How are you going to expedite the project? So all those things happen in real time, and that's where things start to go off kilter. But if you build that sooner in the stages, so that it's a collaboration approach, and they can make then informed decisions on, yes, it's going to cost us more, but the benefit of getting us in there 6 months earlier is a sort of strategic decision we can make. But they're making an informed decision rather than just making a decision and then trying to squeeze a square peg into a round hole. If we look at the gaps in the sorry, where are we? Where 70% is still Excel and paper-based. Excel, I think, is always going to be a tool that's used, especially within cost management. It's heavily used. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's about trying to get, can you structure it, standardise it, that you don't have 20 different cost managers using 20 different trackers, which is usually the case. Everyone will siphon off the little bits of piece of information, double handle information, reprocess it to suit themselves, and you've got everyone doing the same thing, double handing work. That the administration sort of time and heavy lift that requires is just, that's where you're not getting efficient use of the information or data. We've got less than 5% using predictive analytics and cost risk management, which is probably due to lack of standardisation. These numbers will slowly pivot as you start to see people implement standards and a standard approach. So then they can see, okay, now we can actually automate, now we can actually get good predictive information out of it. And less than 20% of companies using like integrated software from the field at scale. So all of those things are related. As we start to use more field-based apps, we start to standardise things will start to align. You'll see that the productivity gains will go up with it. And with that, we see there's a huge opportunity. So I think the discussion, I suppose, today would be about this opportunity. There's a massive value here of, like, from the McKinsey report, they estimate there's $1.6 trillion in opportunity for improved performance, whether that's cost management, how we deal with data, having better information, allowing to make better decisions, better use of resources. So that is where I think there's a great opportunity with what we've got, and that's the exciting part. The next 5 years, you talk maybe 10 years, but of where you've seen change, especially if you look at the BIM mandate, like 2011, when that sort of started to come on, there was a lot of change in a 10-year span, but I think that is now shrinking. Now we're seeing year on year between, say, 2020 and now. I think like COVID playing into forcing everyone into a digital landscape has just rapidly accelerated uptake of digital tools and people's acceptance of digital tools, because it's still about there's a cultural shift there, but we're now well on way. There's momentum there, and I think the next few years are going to be transformative for the construction industry. So if we look at why projects are failing, there's a lack of standardisation. So there's a lot of repeat manual processes where misaligned schedules and budgets. So like I said, there'd be different stakeholders with different agendas of what they need for themselves, but trying to get that aligned at early stages. Outdated and siloed data. This, for me, is probably the biggest one. You've got multiple teams, multiple stakeholders, all with their own siloed data. And it's very challenging when you go, okay, I want this. You start to get access into all the different data pools, and when you pull it together, none of it talks, none of it syncs. You just, even as simple things of going, okay, let's all call the packages the same. Is that an electrical package? Is it electrical works? Is it, there's 100 different ways of saying different things. just pulling that together and allowing like simple things of in the schedule, you create columns to say, okay, every task in the schedule belongs to a package because it's part of the scope of works. If we can assign all that to like cost code it with a standard cost coding structure, and you've got your commercial team working with your standard work breakdowns cost coding structure, we can start to get the information to talk. But without that little bit of standardisation, it's very challenging to get that to talk. And you'll find little changes, you'll map it the first time, and then things will change and you'll have to redo all the work again. So you don't get benefit of that sort of workload. Lack of real-time visibility on projects, that would be probably the next key issue, where there's this lag, especially cost reporting. You've got teams working to try and get like a monthly report, right? They lock it down, end of the month, present that, and it might be a couple of weeks that it goes from your GC or your supply chain to your GC to your PMC into your client, and then client to maybe higher stakeholders. And you could be easily, an 8-week lag is not unusual. And trying to make decisions that can positively mitigate risk or impact the project is challenging, because things are usually too far down the road. They've just got to take it on the chin. Okay, that's going to cost us X amount extra, but we need to deal with it. Whereas if they can get these decisions earlier on in the timeline, things can be mitigated. Yes, there might be a cost impact, but it's a lot lower. It's a time impact. So you can get better decisions with better visibility. Inconsistent communication, again, which I've spoken about, and teams firefighting instead of like just doing their job and delivering their day-to-day works. With that, having real-time information, leadership teams can make good decisions based on real information, and that brings trust, accountability, and everything just starts to work in a more fluid way. The foundation for this: people, process, technology. It's something like within the sort of BIM landscape. I think it's way back in the start was always the case, and I think it was always the case before BIM. I think BIM just brought to the front centre and said, we need to get this right. This is, and try to put frameworks in place to do it. You're working with people. Construction is about people. Communication. Even other industries, finance. You've got people at the heart of it. So trying to have the right expertise, collaborating with the people, understanding the people and their needs is key to that. Setting standardisation and processes around that lets them do their work in a efficient and repeatable way, especially if you start looking at multi-project portfolio reporting. It's so important that, yes, you've got good processes on your project, but you have a standard approach across your portfolio so that you can then start to measure like for like. A lot of clients will just go, okay, as long as that project is performing in its own right, that's okay. This project over here is different. How do we compare? If it's performing in its own right, that's okay. But when you want to try and scale and get efficiencies, you need standardisation. And then finally, we lead to the technology. So the technology needs to be an enabler. It's not like, okay, here's a great piece of software, let's see how it fits, make it fit. And usually what happens is we've worked with clients that they've bought a great piece of software, they're just about to throw it out, and they said, we spent a year trying to implement that, didn't work, it's not right for us. But it was down to, okay, what were the processes? And then once you line out the process of what they're actually trying to do, and then you go, okay, let's configure the software to suit your needs, if it's the right piece of software, and then align it that way so that the software is making their jobs easier, less administration, it's automating tasks, or that you can then, there's a shared sort of collaborative environment that people can work in efficiently, and then you can enable automation, better flow of data, digital like predictive analytics and things like that start to open up. So really that success is getting that balance between these right, and starting with people, process, and then finishing up with technology that enables and streamlines all that. We look at like the evolving digital world where we've transitioned from, I suppose if you're on construction sites, you're still seeing the last plan of process, sticky notes, and there's value in that because that's the people and communication and behaviour piece. You still need that, it's still important. But it's very difficult to capture what the digital, it doesn't have a digital footprint, and trying to capture that and get feedback through that is very challenging. You still need the process where people are in a room, they're communicating about the day-to-day logistics that just change so rapidly on construction sites. What we move into a digital landscape where we've got multiple tools. Each team has like a whole suite of digital tools now that they're using, and it's trying to go, okay, can we capture that information, pull that through into a data warehouse. Like today, I'm not going to focus on the technical side. It's more on a high level side to make it accessible to everyone. But essentially, you're pulling that data, tapping into various data silos, different software tools, pulling that together, and then start to layering your reporting on top of that. But really, there's a lot of value. I think I've seen a shift where people and companies are starting to say, "Oh yeah, we want to get our data into a central place that we can actually leverage." Because you'll put it there, and then there'll be multiple teams can do different reporting on that data. So it becomes a valued asset, and I think that's been a shift in, say, with at an enterprise level, they're seeing data as an asset, and that's a big shift. Because then if you want to get value of it, that will then drive, okay, we need good quality data so we can rely on it. And then it looks at, okay, do we have processes in place? Do we have governance? Do we have standardization in place that when we capture the data at source, we know it's reliable, usable, and we can then leverage it at an enterprise level. Now we look at our modern meeting. We've got digital dashboards. We're on Zoom. People can be connected from around the world. So we're on meetings every day, and it's a global coordination effort. Our main thing now is juggling time zones. So you've got people in the US, in Asia, across Europe, and you're trying to slot in time zones that work for multiple stakeholders across the globe. So these large mega scale projects, they're driven by global organisations of like multiple stakeholders. So that becomes, in the digital landscape, that is now achievable. 10 years ago, that would have been very challenging. It was always on site, there's your meeting room, everyone get there. Now it's accepted that people can do more, they can dial in and you can get more work done. You don't have to be physically present in the room. So a connected reporting solution, like I said, trying to connect into all those different silos, all the different landscape of software tools that are available, and there's some great software that are really enabling the industry, which is really good to see, but it's about connecting into that, tying all the different, having accessible into a central place where you can access those siloed data, enabling real-time updates. So if you've got a field tool that the different task teams are updating when they're doing activities, I think that's one of the challenges is like progress updating. We've seen some really good sort of AI sort of image generation tools like OpenSpace, BuildDocs that are using 3D capture, aligning that with models and schedules, and starting to get really good, clever reporting tools. So that's good to see, but you still need to have mechanisms for the foreman, the boots on the ground, capturing what information, what work they're working on, and that last planner piece, capturing that and feeding that into the overall sort of macro master schedule that may be sitting in P6. And having a scalable solution. So when we're always looking at we take a sort of enterprise approach, even if we're looking at a single project in isolation, we'll build processes and systems. So like, if and when you want to scale this across a whole portfolio, what does that look like? You need to kind of look at the full portfolio, bring it back, okay, build that piece. When you're ready and you want to start building the next building blocks, we've already enabled it to allow for a multi-project solution. So it's really important having that bit of foresight to go, well, what does this look like in an ideal situation? Bring it back and go, okay, we'll do reporting, even if it's on just a discipline. You need to be able to then modulise it so you can go, okay, here's one discipline, here's another, and you can build on it as they need. But you've got the foresight of like, this will scale. Again, starting with a data as a foundation. So getting that right is really important. Having those standard processes and this naming standards around. So when we're talking about data, that we talk about the same things. Your electrical package is electrical, or it's the equivalent code of it in your work breakdown structure and your cost coding. You've got standard processes. Then we can automate capturing data at source. So if you've got the QSs working in ACC or whatever tool they may be using, can we have an API that can capture that so they can just focus on doing their day-to-day job, the cost control, working with their teams. You've got the schedulers teams working in, say, P6 or other tools. They focus on their workload, just getting the day-to-day, managing their tasks, and then we pull that through into a shared, centralised system that scales. Schedule management. So if the two elements we've got your time and your costs, and they're very interrelated. You get one wrong, it's going to impact the other. So they're going to take you long or cost you more. So clearly defining scope. And I'll go through another slide here with cost management, and you'll see there's a lot of overlap. So whether you're pricing something, you need to know what you're pricing. What's the scope of the project? And being able to automate that from models and getting the right content from the models is key to that those quantities. So the same way when you're producing your schedule, do you know the quantity of concrete, the tonnage of steel? That all impacts on you'll have rates of like, okay, what's your work rate? Okay, we know we can put X amount of concrete a day in, take the teams this size, so you can start building out an accurate time and schedule. Standard work breakdown structure. So that's where you see a lot with schedules. That every organisation will have their own different work breakdown structure, usually spun depending on, like, if they're a fit-out contractor, they'll have a certain work breakdown structure. Do they do it by area? Do they do it by discipline or stage of commissioning? Or if they're doing a CSA contractor, will have a different one. Client will have a different one. So it's really trying to go, what is that work breakdown structure? I think the ICMS, you can, or the NRM, you can take a similar work breakdown structure at that high level that will suit your schedule as well as your cost plan. And if you can get some alignment there, it makes reporting and collaborating between the scheduling team and the cost team a lot easier. The right level of detail. So key to that is that it's not so, if you're trying to get a detailed time or program out of it and you're only at like level 2 of like a strategic planning of seeing long tasks that just says data hall 1 fit out, and it's like, well, you don't have enough granularity in there to get a detailed plan. So it's having that right level of detail. Additional metadata, so having, if you've got packages or cost codes, areas and things like that, so layering, you don't just have a task that sits with a start date and an end date. You need a bit of metadata about that task, who's doing it, where is it being done, and then you've also got the time of when it's been done. So now you can start getting a bit more context about each task. The location, work packages, cost codes. So just a very simple exercise of doing the work of getting your location, your work package and cost codes in on each of those tasks is really powerful, of then being able to connect the data. It's like if you have a model, having the right parameters in a model that you can then leverage and integrate with field apps. Like at GagaMuller, part of the Wayloader is a field app that we use of capturing the progress on site. Monitor, adjust in real time. I don't know how long have I got on time.
We're over time.
Okay, and I had less slides. I'll slide down this.
We can always actually pick it up afterwards in the questions and answers.
Yeah. So I don't need to reiterate that for cost management. Yeah. It's about defining scope, standard work breakdown to a level of detail. So really important is trying to align those things. I was going to go into EVM, but that is where you start to leverage. Okay, you've got your cost reports, your cost team are costing out their cost model. You've got your schedule, and then connecting those two and applying EVM. Especially if we've got some contracts where they're tying that into their progress payments. You've got the understanding the rules of measure, but doing that hard work, heavy lift at the start, really aligning the two. And because you're relying on, say, the schedule now to drive your progress payments, the schedule needs to be really accurate because it's impacting what they're being paid. And that the teams start to work very closely together. The information output is accurate because they're relying on it. And there's like that circular. Because people are relying on it, they need it to be right. And because it needs to be right, people are putting that effort into the start and having your progress and updates. So that's. I'll wrap up there.
Thank you. Thank you
no
very
worries.
much.
You're welcome.